So I'm going to share 5 ideas of Chomer Ledrush, ideas that I think can be developed, each one in their own way, for drushes on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I guess the focus for me on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, unlike the Shiurim pre-Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, is more sort of try to be more inspirational and get people going and awakened and so on and so forth. So let's start with number 1. Number 1 is based on this could be good for Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur really, but it relates to a Gemara regarding Yom Kippur. But it's I think relates to the ongoing 2 themes that are present on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is both asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu tefillah for the things that we need and the ksivach sematova and so on, but at the same time tshuva, trying to recommit and trying to awaken ourselves and remembering what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking from us, so to speak. So there's a Gemara in Brachos Lav Zayin, a famous Gemara. Amar Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, he was a Kohen Gadol. He said he went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. You have the Gemara in front of you, number 1. And he said he saw an image which can Mefarshim battle exactly what that means, but it's a conversation between him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu essentially. So he says, Omar li, said to me, Yishmol b'ni bרכני, Yishmol, my son, bless me. אמרתי לו, I said to him, רצון לפניך, שיכבשו כרחמך חסכך ויגל רחמך ותיסך, and so on and so forth. So the 2 famous kashas in this Gemara, I mean, obviously, first of all, what does it mean, bרכני? HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs a bracha. And second of all, Mefarshim talk about, and second of all, he didn't really give HaKadosh Baruch Hu a bracha. What he did was he gave himself a bracha. He gave us a bracha. He asked that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have rachmanas upon us, and he should have rachamim even though we don't do the right thing maybe, and so on and so forth. So there's many Mefarshim, the Ben Yehuda talks about it and so on, but one of the ideas that I shared once on this Inyan is as follows. This is really a conversation between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Bnei Yisrael. So we come into the Yomim Neiroim, we come into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, I suppose, in Inyan, in time, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu confronts us and he says to us, bרכני. Now, bרכני can be translated a different way. The Maharsha says a pshat, and this pshat is sort of a bit modified in Svarim of Soid, that bרכני doesn't actually mean bench me. Bרכני means bring me down, draw me down. From the Lashon HaMavrich Geffen, like we find in the Mishnah, when you graft a tree, you've got to draw down the tree, you've got to draw down the roots. Maharsha says something very similar, that bרכני, in other words, bring down the brachas. So essentially, one can say the following, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to the Yid and he says, bרכני, bring me down, reveal me in the world. This is the tachlis. What I want from you this year is to be megala me, reveal me in olam hazeh through Torah and mitzvahs. So the Yid, the Kohen Gadol, representing the Bnei Yisrael, turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, Beseder, but we have a request from you. And the request is, make it easier for us. In other words, we're asking you for the inyanim that we need the tools. Rambam says with regard to the brachas of Bechakosai and so on, we're asking you for the brachas, for the good year, for the prosperity, for the menuchas hanefesh, and to have that, we'll be able then to serve you in the proper way. That's why the bracha that he gives in response is a counter question. In other words, ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we will commit, but so make it easy for us to serve you. And what does the Gemara say at the end? The Gemara says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's masking. So therefore, the concept is that when we daven on Rosh Hashanah, I guess the idea is to be more early people. We're not just davening for a shopping list. We're davening in the context where remember that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking us something as well. He's asking us bרכני. He's asking us to commit to the year of bringing him down into olam hazeh, and bringing him being megala, his kedusha, his alakus in the world. We're asking him to make it easier for us, therefore to be moichelas and to have rachmim upon us, even if we didn't mamish deserve it. And he v'nana li b'roisha, and he's masking. Just a little bit bekesha to this. I want to say that by Ne'ilah, also like a sort of a response, that when it comes to the end, the culmination of this whole Inyan comes by to Ne'ilah. At the end of the Ne'ilah, we know the climax of the Ne'ilah is we scream out Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Now we commit to the Emunah. It says in the Shalom that when a person says Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, he should have in mind to be moist in nefesh for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be considerate as if he was moist in nefesh. So we know that Magi Dvorav Li'akeh, whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks us to do, he does the same. So the Gemara, also Gemara in Brachos, I think, the Gemara says that what is it? What's written in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tefillin? So in our tefillin it says Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tefillin it says Mika Amcha Yisrael Goyachah Ba'aretz. So I was thinking that maybe the pshat is at the end of the whole process we both come to a climax by Ne'ilah. That we have to come back and commit to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking us. He's asking us bרכני, So we scream out at the end, we are committing Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And we have bitachon and complete faith that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing the same for us. And when he comes to the end of the Ilah, he's screaming out what we scream out. We scream out Hashem Echad, he screams out to Mika Amcha Yisrael, Goy Echad Ba'aretz. And maybe that's the bond, that's the final sort of thing, how we go away from Yom Kippur. And we have bitachon, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us what we need, and we have bitachon, we trust in ourselves, hopefully, that we will commit and carry it with us and do what we need to do. So that's just the word that you can develop in that Gemara. That's number one. I'm just conscious, I want to sort of keep the time here, so I'm going to keep going. The second idea, I just thought everyone that comes to shul on Rosh Hashanah, on any level, eats apple and honey and knows about the simonim that we eat on the first night of Rosh Hashanah bifrat. So I just thought sometimes maybe this is good for the first night of Rosh Hashanah, I don't know, but maybe before even, just to give a little bit of depth to the simonim of Rosh Hashanah. I thought I'd show you, just share a couple of inyanim. First of all, I mean, it's all based on the Gemara, of course. The Gemara says that it's a Gemara in Horius. Number 2, you have it on your handout. Amar Abaya, Hashta the Omrat Simona Milsi. It's based on the concept of Simona Milsa. So since Simona Milsa, therefore, we should always be rogil on Reish Shata, on the Rosh Hashanah, to eat these various different things, which are simonim for a good inyan. So that developed all different types of minhagim. The most famous one probably is the apple and honey. Different people do different things. The people who come from Ashkenazi, Yiddish-speaking lands eat tzimis, carrots, because in Yiddish it's meren, which is to multiply. So that's the idea. Anything that has a simon of a dover toiv, we know it to eat on Rosh Hashanah because based on this inyan of simonu milsi. So I saw onto this Sfas Emes, I think, says, the Gevaldik word, what does it mean, simonu milsi? Simonu milsi is not just like a symbol of doing something that has a good omen, and therefore we do it because to bring about a bracha. Because we daven for that. I mean, why do we have to eat food? But he says Simona Milsi is really also part of our commitment. That again, same idea, that we're asking from HaKadosh Baruch Hu lots of things in Rosh Hashanah. He should bench us with all kinds of different inyanim. We all have our individual and collective shopping list of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu hopefully will give us in the coming year. But we have to reflect on what are we asking for and why we're asking for it. So he says that part of what we do is on Rosh Hashanah, we eat the things that have a good siman, but it's also part of our commitment. Simona Milsa, he means the recognition, the acknowledgement that the gashmias, the physical brachas that we get, are be'emes just a siman. They're a code. And it's up to us to decode that siman, to decode that code. What does that mean? In other words, everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us is really meant to be used for a specific purpose. It's meant to be used for a life of meaning and purpose. So when we eat it, what we're saying is we're eating physical, tangible things in the hope that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us these things that we are asking for, but the idea is that we're also committing that it should be simona milsi, that we should use it as a simon, not an end in itself, but as a means to giving more meaning and purpose to life by using the brachas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us for a higher purpose. The Emes says that this is also very much tied into a vort on Zacheinu L'chaim. We say Zacheinu L'chaim Elachafetz B'chaim Kasveinu B'Sefer HaChaim, and then we end off L'man Cholakim Chaim. What does it mean, L'man Cholakim Chaim? The same sort of word. The word is that L'man Cholakim Chaim means that we're committing, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kasveinu B'Sefer Chaim, but we're asking that L'man Cholakim Chaim. Ultimately, it's for the Eibishter's sake, so to speak. It's for his sake, because if we use it right, then we're able to use those inyonim gashmim to serve him and to learn more Torah and do more mitzvahs, so it's L'man Cholakim Chaim. Which fits into a very famous idea. Of course, again, there's just different ideas. You can use them together, use them separately. Of the famous concept of the Tfilas Chana and the Haftorah of the first day of Rosh Hashanah, where just very bekitzer, where Chana was suspected of being a shikar by Eli Kohen, and she said to him, "Lo yadoini, no, I'm not a shikar, but ve'eshpoches nafshi lifnei Hashem." So one of the ideas behind this, of course, is that what's the pshat? Eli couldn't tell the difference between a drunkard person and a broken-hearted woman who's davening. But one of the ideas behind it is that the word shikrus doesn't only mean intoxicated from alcohol. Shikrus means anytime you overindulge in something. Eli suspected Chana that Taka, you're asking, he knew exactly what she was doing. But he said, Lama tishtakarin, why are you drunk? In other words, why are you overindulging in your needs? Ultimately, it's your needs in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going on and on. Taka, you ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's Rosh Hashanah, whatever it was at that time, according to the Mefarshim. It's lifnei Hashem, it's in front of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Why are you indulging so much in things that you need, even though it's a very legitimate need? So she says, Lo yadoini, I'm not shikr, I'm not indulging in my needs, I'm indulging in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's needs. Because I'm really asking Lifnei Hashem. I'm asking for a son because, as she went on to say, I want to dedicate him to Avodas Hashem, which she did. It's exactly what she did, and therefore he was masking. He said, if that's the case, it's not true. So Rosh Hashanah, we have these two ideas that come together. In other words, on the one hand, we asking for a lot of our own needs, and yet as Yom Adin, and we're standing in front of Kadosh Baruch Hu, we being Mamlich Kadosh Baruch Hu as a king. So how does it all go together? So I suppose we have to remember the conversation between Eli and Hannah. Eli is asking us, the voice of Eli is asking us, hold on a second, why are you asking for these things? They're good needs, but why are you standing now, Rosh Hashanah? And our response has to try and be, we have to aspire to say, that we asking it because we want to use it out for a good purpose. Just one prat in the Simonim, I think I saw this when they Soscho once, when they get honey. And I don't know where I saw also why apple and honey, because if you want something sweet, apple's loved after the sweetest thing. But first of all, honey is a very, very important Indian. Granted, the Sephardim don't eat honey. The Sephardim, I think, eat sugar. But Ashkenazim eat honey. Not only Rosh Hashanah, but throughout the whole process. But honey is a very interesting food. It's a very sweet food. And yet it's the only food we eat that comes from a treif animal, which normally the halacha is something comes from treif is treif. The Gemara has a whole sugya to explain why honey is not treif. But ultimately it comes from a non-kosher source, and it comes from an animal that stings. So I think that the idea, I saw this on this once, is that that's the whole Indian of Rosh Hashanah. Tshuva and the whole process of Rosh Hashanah is an Indian of transformation, being mahapech, that which is negative. We all come from a year where there might have been some non-kosher yonin, there might have been things that are hurtful, that are hurtful, like a bee that stings. And yet the power of tshuva is that we can transform that which is negative into something which is positive, something which makes us a stronger person, a sweeter person, and adarabah, from the negativity of honey, from the treif source and from the stinging source, you transform it into something which is gewaldigly sweet. When I get apple and honey, just a word, and we'll finish this concept with this. The apple and honey, we know, are completely two opposites. Honey lasts forever, it's a preservative, whereas apple is sweet, but it goes rotten very, very quickly. Maybe that's also part of the lesson of apple and honey, that we commit on Rosh Hashanah, we do tshuva, because apple is a symbol of commitment. If you see in the handout, there's the famous Gourarie in Shabbos, which says why the Yidden compared to a tapuach, because ma tapuach ze pirya kodim la'olav, even though, just like a tapuach, the fruit comes before the leaves. So the Yidden were gidimun nasel and nishma. So the apple is a symbol of our commitment. We come Rosh Hashanah, we make a commitment. But we know the famous problem is that the commitment we make Rosh Hashanah, everyone's enthusiastic, they come to shul, each one on their own level and so on. But lav dafka, it's going to last. So the pshat is that we take the apple, which is a symbol of our commitment, and we dip it into honey. Honey lasts, honey preserves, in the hope that this commitment will last beyond just Rosh Hashanah. Okay, go on to the third Indian. And this is just the power of tefillah. Of course, the theme of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is davening. Everyone davens in their own way. The power of tefillah and the power of tefillah even of a simple person. So the Gemara in Brachos, you have there on your handout, says the following: Amar Rav Amnuna, Kama Hilchas Gabrasa Ikel Mishma Mahane Kroi Dechana. Right, we can learn so many halachas from the Psukim of Chana. First of all, it says V'chana Medaberes Al Libo, Mikan LeMispalel Tzarich Sheyechaven Libo. Okay, if they have kavanah. Svaseo noise, Mikan Sheyispalel Sheyachtoch Bisvasav. You have to enunciate. You have to say the lips. On the other hand, it says V'koyel Lo Yishama, because She'asel Agbiya Koyel B'Tfilasei, you're not allowed to daven loud. And it says V'achshaveh Oil Shikoyra Mikan Pashtuv Shat of Shikrus. In other words, Mikan Sheshikr Asel Yispalel. So the kasha is, Chana is not the first tefillah. We used Chana as an unbelievable tefillah, but it's not the first tefillah. Why dafka from this tefillah we want to learn all these halachas? We know that we learn halachas of Shemona Esrei taka from Chana, but why taka from Chana? So one of the ideas behind it is as follows: that there are two kinds of tefillah, and which bring out the power of tefillah. So there's regular tefillah, which we daven every day for routine stuff, things which we really expect to happen in a way, but we just acknowledge that obviously it comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore we daven that HaKadosh Baruch Hu taka give it, regular health, regular parnasa, and so on and so forth. Then there are things where we tend to give up hope because there are things that seem impossible. So it's davening for something which seems either a little miraculous or seems beyond what is possible to achieve, or we don't deserve it, or whatever the case is. Which in a way, it's more than Sfarim is what the word Yehi Rotzain means. We say in davening, we say Yehi Rotzain. Yehi Rotzain often means that Yehi Rotzain is that there should be a Rotzain. In other words, we davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that there should be a new Ratzon. In other words, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have the Ratzon to give it to us, but there should be a new Ratzon. It's like a whole chidush. It's a chidush in tefillah. The Medrash says, the Gemara brings down that Chana naturally wasn't able to have children. She's too old, or she had different pshatim. So the embassy, she didn't give up. She davened for something which was be'etzem, not within reach. And we read that Akhtoira on Rosh Hashanah because sometimes we davening for things. Everyone has their own private inyanim, and sometimes we feel that some of those things, it's not a good chance it's going to happen. So we learn from Chana, we don't give up. We can daven even for things that are beyond what seems possible. However, says the Gemara, there are a couple of tnoim. There are a couple of conditions to make that happen. First of all, sheikhabenis liboy. It's got to be with kavanah. In other words, it's got to be sincere. You got to acknowledge and be meshachnea to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So sell noise. We know we've got to say the words. That's the halachas of tefillah. But at the same time, oselak biyakoylai. We have to show humility. One of the ideas of tefillah, one of the ideas of powerful tefillah is not so much the kavanah, but it's the subservience. It's giving ourselves over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's surrendering. Surrendering, but still being present. In other words, it's us that's surrendering. Because the Gemara says, shikr osel ispalel. Shikr is not allowed to daven. In other words, you have to be there. You have to be there, but as a metzius, as a person, as a yid davening, you have to completely surrender. Not surrender that you disappear, that you don't even know what you're doing. It's a conscious surrender. Shikr osel ispalel, but yet at the same time, koiloi lo yishama, it's got to be a proper surrendering. For those with that type of tanoim, with those conditions that the Gemara learns of Tefillah Chana, that's the power of Tefillah that we can achieve unbelievable things even out of our reach. Which just is emphasized by another amazing Indian, and that is the power of Tefillah. The Gemara tells us like this. The Gemara tells us in Yuma. You have a look at the second part of the handout that the Kohen Gadol in Kodesh HaKadoshim would daven. A short tefillah when he came out. My matzlah, says the Gemara, he would say, Yiratzim l'fanacha Hashem Elokeinu, shetei shana zu kshuma shchuna, it should be a rainy year and a hot year. Where it says shchuna, hot is not a milah. So he says, no, im shchuna tehei kshuma, if it was nigzar, that it should be shchuna, it should be geshuma, it should be a rainy year. And then he goes on to say that that there should be the leadership shouldn't disappear from Yehuda. The Yidden shouldn't need parnasses and mizeh. And then he says an amazing thing. He says, that the tefillah of a traveler, pashat a guy is traveling and davens to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that it shouldn't rain, shouldn't be niskabel. So here you see an amazing koyach tefillah. And maybe that's the whole theme of the power to daven, the power you can achieve to daven, even the impossible. Why do we see the amazing koyach tefillah here? Because we're talking about a pashat a guy who's traveling. He davens to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that it shouldn't rain because he needs to get from place A to place B. He's just a traveler, and his tefillah will be, and it's not even a nice tefillah. It's not a sensitive tefillah. It's a bit of a selfish tefillah because he knows that the world needs rain, yet he needs it shouldn't rain on him because he doesn't want to get wet when he travels. Yet the only way to be mavatal that tefillah, it needs the Kohen Gadol coming out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim to cancel that tefillah. That's unbelievable. So you see that you need such an incredible koyach to mevatel that tefillah. From that gufa you can learn the koyach tefillah, which goes back to tefillah chana, particularly Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, where koyach tefillah is so unbelievable that you can even daven for things which are maybe out of our reach, but nevertheless, the power of tefillah is yehi ratzon. We can achieve that chidush and accomplish them as well. Okay, just number 4. I just wanted to focus a little bit on shofar. We all talked before shofar. So you have an interesting medrash. The medrash says just a little bit about the koyach shofar and what it means. The shofar obviously represents something. It represents the cry, the tshuva, the power of tshuva, the alarm clock, and so on, all the different inyanim and shofar. But the medrash says about shofar, it says, we say the psukim after shofar, ashrei ha'am yoidei srua. Happy, says the medrash, v'chi ein umas ha'olam yoidim la'ariya, kama kronos yesh lehem, etc. Why do we single out the Yidden ashrei ha'am yoidei srua? Elashahein makirin lefates as boiron, they know how to appease HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'trua, v'oimed mekisei din lekisei rachmim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets up from kisei din, kisei rachmim, and he's rachmim on them, and he's mahapach midas adin to midas rachmim. So what's the power of shofar? So just a couple of interesting ideas. I mean, there's so much on shofar, but just thought I'd share this with you, coming out of a Mishnah, coming out of a few inyanim. So one of the things it says about, first of all, the power of shofar is, we know that halachically, that the mitzvah of shofar is lishmoya kol shofar. Ad kedei kach that if you hear someone blow a shofar out of a stolen shofar, still yotze. Why? Because the mitzvah is not the tkiyah, the mitzvah is the shmir. Obviously, the concept of shofar is absorbing, listening to the shofar. Not the power is not in the skill of the musician. Power is in the person listening to the instrument, which is already a chiluk between the shofar and other instruments. It's all about the person listening. It's all about the person absorbing. That's why the bracha of lishmoya. We stand before shofar. The idea is for each and every one of us to try and absorb a little bit of the message of shofar. So how do we do that? Does it need amazing things? No. So the Mishnah says not like that. The Mishnah has two halachas which are interesting by shofar, which you can put together. One is atakel soichaboyer. Someone blows shofar in a pit, in a cistern, in a big thing, in a vault. So it says the Mishnah in kol shofar shama yotza. If you heard the voice of the shofar is yotza. In kol havara shama, but if you heard the voice of an echo, lo yotza. That's one halacha. Another halacha is that hoya also in Rosh Hashanah Chav Zayin. Says however the voice comes out, doesn't have to be beautiful, doesn't have to be melodious, doesn't have to be musically sound. It's all kosher because all the sounds that come out of a shofar are kosher. Doesn't matter what the sound is. So I think putting those two things together, this is the vart. The vart is standing by tkiyah shofar. We need to know we don't have to achieve amazing things, but we have to produce something. Something every year, every person standing in shul, every person hearing shofar in their own way has to produce something. Whatever you produce, one step forward, each one in their own madrega, yotza. There's only one tonight. It can't be the voice of an echo. Because we know the difference between an echo and an echo is something which doesn't absorb, it bounces off something else. The echo is not yotza. When is it? When a yotza in kol shofar yotza, because an echo, if it's not an echo, it means it's absorbed. An echo bounces off. As long as we absorb the message, if we lishmoya kol shofar, then it doesn't matter what it is. Kol hakoilos ksherim, everything is kosher. One step, one coil is still kosher as long as it's not an echo, as long as it doesn't bounce off, but it's absorbed within us. Also, it has to be with a shtickle shift, like a paradigm shift, a whistle to subjugate ourselves, because the word trua also comes from pasuk in Tilim. To royam b'shevet barzel, because it says Asher Adam Yoidei Srua, which is the concept of trua, which is to break ourselves a little bit, to go out of our comfort zone, each one in our own way, just a little bit. As long as it's a little bit, it's one step, it's kosher. As long as we absorb it, it doesn't bounce off. Finally, I just want to talk about a very interesting chazal, which maybe used towards the end of Yom Kippur, urging people not to leave it in Yom Kippur, but to make sure it follows on for the rest of the year. So we know that one of the main avodas of Yom Kippur is katoras, and the Gemara says, number 5 of the Gemara says that when a person I won't go through the whole Gemara, but if you just say one line and the second line over there, it says Izim shebeyerichoi hoyim nisashtois mereach haktoras, that the goats of Yerichoi would sneeze from the smell of the katoras, and that was a long way away from Yerushalayim. So obviously the kasha is, it's a nice fact, but the man of Kamina. What do we have to know? The katoras was so strong that the goats used to sneeze. But we know that the whole concept of katoras, it's brought down in Svarim, the Emunas Yitachar, Moshe Wilson talks about this. That person has 5 senses: touch, taste, sight, hearing, and smell. Smell is the katoras, and the other senses of a person can be damaged. But we know smell is something that normal people, healthy people don't have the Yetzer Hara when it comes to smell. We have the Yetzer Hara to look what we shouldn't, to touch what we shouldn't, to eat what we shouldn't. But smell is not challenged. Why? Because smell is ruchni, and smell represents the part of our neshama which is never damaged, never corrupted. Yom Kippur is the avoid of katoras. We go לפני ולפנים. We go into the very depths of our neshama and we access that part of our neshama that's reach, that's katoras, the ultimate yichud with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the part of our neshama that's always one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the tachlis of all of that is that the goats in Yerichoi should sneeze. What's that? That the goats represent the Gashmistic part of us, the animalistic part of us, that are outside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that are far away from Yom Kippur, that are months away, that we hope that even months away, we can still hear we can still smell the Reach HaKatoris, that hopefully during the year we remind ourselves, we reconnect to the Gewaldige experience of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and hopefully we come to shul, we come to shir, we do something because we're influenced by the smell of the Katoris that was brought in Yom Kippur, that purity, that neshama that we felt in Yom Kippur. Then even the goats away in Yerichoi are still effective. Just to finish off on that line with one word, I once said in Yom Kippur, I asked the kasha, it was based on a particular context. You know, in the Ila, the gates closed, so there's a famous word from the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he used to, I don't know if it's the other source of it too, but he used to emphasize it a lot, that in the Ila doesn't mean the gates close with us on the outside, but the gates close with us on the inside. In other words, it's a yichud, it's just us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the Zohar says, Yisrael Malkal Bil Chaydoy, it's a time of intimacy between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Yidden, and the gates are closed. So that's the kasha. If that's the pshat in the Ila, then there's a problem with one of the piyutim. Because the piyutim says, Psach lanu shar be'eisna ila shar. Open the gates when the gates are closing. So if the pshat is that we're inside and it's only us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why would he want the gates to open? I said maybe the pshat's like this, that the bakasha we have to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not b'shas ma'aseh. We're saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're face to face at the Ila, at the climax of Yom Kippur. We're mamish talking to each other, only us and Hashem. It's an unbelievable yichud. But we know it's going to come to an end and we're going to leave and we're going to have to go into the year. So we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu a bakasha that during the year, from time to time, psach lanu shar, open up the gate. Let us glimpse back into that experience of the Ila. Let us glimpse back into the experience of going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and be influenced and remember and reignite that spark that was there from the time of Yom Kippur. These are just some thoughts. Shkoyach again, Rabbi Krebs. I don't know if any of this was chidushim for anyone, but if you can use it, adrabah.
Shkoyach. Well, Shkoyach, Rabbi Gourarie, thank you so much for the enormous effort you put into preparing that. Shkoyach, and thank you very much. I'm going to mute you now, and then Rabbi Blackman, I'm going to unmute.
Unmute myself? Oh, you mute me.
All right, Rabbi Blackman, you're on.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, ready? Okay. Looking to share an understanding of the avodah of the month of Elul as a preparation, of course, for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is the most obvious understanding of what the month is. However, we need to appreciate the nature of this avodah that we have in preparation for the Yom Noraim through the month of Elul. Now, generally, there's a very deep concept which looks to understand how the times of the various yontivs and all commemorative events through the Jewish year are considered yomim or periods of time that actually are defined not just as metaphorically having a character of time, whether sad or happy, good or bad, but hashkavically and possibly even halachically, we see that there are big nafkaminas between having court cases at various times of the year and in general engaging with times during the calendar year based on the character that the world of halacha and machshava gives them. This is a theme that Rav Soloveitchik developed quite extensively to try and appreciate the concept of how time actually takes on a character. So in the secular world, it's just based on subjective events. So time for a certain person can be happy or sad, but intrinsically, from a secular point of view, time is a totally independent entity, and there's no character associated with time. However, from a Ashkavic point of view, from Yiddishkeit's viewpoint, we seem to see very, very differently that time is infused with a certain kind of character. Briefly put, the deep idea behind it is as follows. Time is a gift HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave humanity, which allows us to exist on a plane where human beings are requested to interact via their free choice with potential energy for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation in the world. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in a sense, pumps potential energy into the atmosphere. We don't, unless you're very spiritually sensitive, you can't really feel it on a constant basis, but you'll feel it if you are sensitive in areas like politics, finance, inventions, even, so to speak, communal issues, universal issues. People can feel that a time is ripe for a certain idea or for a certain change. That is an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu trying to be mitgaleh in the world in which we live. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tries to reveal himself through the calendar year. Now, what's interesting is that the calendar is shaped to capture these potential revelations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and specifically to mark how human beings reacted to that potential gift of revelation. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu then decides based on his inscrutable wisdom when a certain time is ripe for a certain type of hitgalut. HaKadosh Baruch Hu pumps it into the air conditioning system of the world, and then waits for humanity to react to that potential energy. If we react l'tov, then we infuse that particular time with positive energy, and it generates from that time on a repetition on a yearly cyclical basis, a revisiting of that initial original energy, waiting for us to enhance it even more. It's blessed and it's happy because it was used from the very first moment of potential to reveal HaKadosh Baruch Hu positively in the world. Lehefech chas v'sholem is the same idea when it goes bad. We have potential energy. Mankind or Am Yisrael bifrat use it l'ra. It then generates tragedy, and from that time on, we revisit all the time to try and be metakein the mistake that was made. That, in a sense, is how we see or invest time with actual character, not just with metaphor. The study, therefore, needs to embark upon a methodological approach based on certain certain methodological ideas given to us via the Goyim and Rishonim. Many Baalei Machshava and Darshanim today try and use or emphasize this point of looking to try and identify the origin of any theme by looking for the first time it appears in Tanakh. As, understanding that the very first time the genesis of any potential energy is going to have repercussions going forward. So the earliest source I found for such an idea is in the Rabbi Gaon. The most explicit I've seen it in is Rabbi Tzadok's writings on Pashat Bo Tzitat HaTzadik. And anyway, many people quote this concept of looking always at the first time for the real core definition of a particular concept. Bearing this in mind, it's interesting to try and appreciate how Chodesh Elul comes into its own. What the energy, what the avoda is going to really depend upon how we appreciate how Elul serves its first purpose, and when is Elul really born in the lives of Klal Yisrael. So I don't know if this is the very first time that we speak of the concept of Elul. However, it definitely takes us back quite close to at least an explicit description of the concept of Elul. We all know that the idea of Elul, seen as a preparatory time to Yom Kippur, comes already during the time of Am Yisrael in the Midbar. Moshe Rabbeinu motivates tshuva as a result of the Egel. And so this is what we find. Whenever you do this experiment, as I'm sure you may have done, on a general knowledge point of view, if you ask an audience who are not, who unfortunately don't have background, how many times Moshe Rabbeinu went up the mountain, they'll all tell you that he went up twice. And those of us who went to a good cheder learned already in the beginning that there were three periods of 40 days and 40 nights that Moshe Rabbeinu spent in Shemayim. The first time was basically straight after Shavuot. Moshe Rabbeinu decides he's going. Hakadosh Baruch Hu tells him that once he's revealed the concept of the Aseret HaDibrot to Am Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu is to be invited up to Shemayim. So he goes up to Shemayim from the 7th of Nisan through the end of from the 7th of Sivan through the end of Sivan will be 23 days. Then you have another 17 days, culminating in 40 days up on the mountain. Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to return to Klal Yisrael on that 40th day, but a mistaken calculation, as we all well know, caused the Egel movement, which eventually caused such a debacle. Moshe Rabbeinu comes down on Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, shatters the Luchos, and tries to put everything right. Tries to pray for a stay of execution for Klal Yisrael. In order to daven, Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Shemayim for the second set of 40 days, and he goes up on the 18th of Tammuz to daven. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will hopefully forgive us for the sin. So Moshe Rabbeinu stays in Shemayim for 40 days, which culminates on the 29th of Av. He comes down again. When Moshe Rabbeinu comes down from the mountain on the 29th of Av, he comes down with a message of forgiveness. Am Yisrael have been forgiven, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was reconciled with Klal Yisrael. So now we ask ourselves, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu already reconciled with Klal Yisrael, and was boichel the sin of the Egel already on the 29th of Av, so what do you need Yom Kippur for? In other words, there's already been a mechila given and a reconciliation had by Rosh Chodesh Elul already. Rosh Chodesh Elul represented a reconciliation with Klal Yisrael, between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. So, in order to appreciate this, there's a Rashi and quite a lengthy Siftei Chachamim on this Rashi, which can be found in Parshat Eikev. This is where Rashi sort of explicitly gives us the timeline here of these visits to Shamayim, 3 sets of 40 days. Just for explicit reference, it's Perek Tet Pasuk Yud Chet. If you have a look there on the words of the Psukim, Vayit Napal Lifnei Hashem Karishona, 40 Yom 40 Laila, etc. Vayit Napal Lifnei Hashem Karishona, 40 Yom. That's the Dibur HaMatchil of Rashi on Pasuk Yud Chet, and Rashi then develops this concept. So Rashi says as follows: that on after the second visit to Shamayim, Moshe Rabbeinu tells Klal Yisrael, "Nitakafti 40 Yom, and nimtzu kalim b'chavtet ba'av, שהוא עולה ב-18 בתמוז." And on that particular set of 40 days, the middle set, boy bayom, on that particular day, nitratzeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu became reconciled with Am Yisrael. And so that there you see explicitly there was a hitratzut, a reconciliation, a mechila given to Klal Yisrael already come Rosh Chodesh Elul. So why do we need Yom Kippur? So yeah, Rashi doesn't say it explicitly, but when you read through the Rashi, you pick it up. The Siftei Chachamim makes an emphasis on this point. What does he say? Rashi says the following: when Moshe Rabbeinu came down after the second visit to Shamayim, that's true. However, at that point, at the end of the second 40 days, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says to him, okay, I want you to come up for a third set, in which and you will make a second set of luchos. That second set of luchos would then be presented to Klal Yisrael 40 days later upon Moshe Rabbeinu's return. Nimtzu kalim b'yom HaKippurim, and there, bo bayom nitratzeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael b'simcha. Ve'amar lo leMoshe salachti kidvarecha. So yeah, Rashi says as follows. Rashi draws a contrast, and this is really the essence of what you can use the word for. There is a complete difference between Bo Bayom Nitratzeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael of Elul and Bo Bayom Nitratzeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael b'simcha. The journey from Nitratzeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael to Nitratzeh Yisrael b'simcha. That is really this unique journey. That is the journey of Elul. So in other words, what's happening is as follows. In any relationship, when there's a breakdown in relationship, you can achieve a certain reconciliation through a therapy session, which would get you to a point where a person does tshuva, where the relationship is repaired, and a person will not be punished for what they've done as a result of the tshuva that they did. So in terms of the tshuva that Am Yisrael did, to allow a culmination of hitratzut at the end of the second set of 40 days, Kam Rosh Chodesh Elul, the level of tshuva they achieved was a stay of execution. It's as if a couple who's struggling have come out of therapy and the marriage is still salvaged. However, one would then need to work really, really hard to create a journey from a stay of execution or lack of punishment to a relationship of absolute closeness between the couple again. And that journey where you move from a state of execution or not being punished, a child and a parent could be that. You could have a whole issue with a child, and the child gives you an excuse and apologizes, and all it's achieved is a lack of punishment. But there's still a journey to go to create that closeness that we need, genuine closeness that you need in the relationship. that is really the avodah of Elul. In other words, Rosh Chodesh Elul, we mark it as the so-called message of forgiveness. But the work of Elul is to get to the level of love and closeness, nitratzet b'simcha, which takes place on Yom Kippur. That's the vort that comes out of the Rashi and the Sifsei Chachomim, and each person can apply how they feel they feel the journey, what it should contain to move people from just being average to being very close with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in relationship. I used when I gave over the shiur last night. Actually, I spoke this out in St. Ives. I got a whole bunch of ladies that were there. I got them to draw a Cartesian plane on a piece of paper, marking out the y-axis and the x-axis, and gave them opportunities to write or answer, give themselves points on each of the axes based on different questions that I would throw out. So I would divide the questions into two. So, for example, you could do it in any way you like, but you could do it where the one axis, let's say the y-axis, the vertical line, represents observance and compliance with halacha on a technical level, and the x-axis represents the improvement of midot and the real investment in the muscle of emunah that we all supposed to have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bottom line is you can also call it the difference between being observant and being religious. You can have people that have one and don't have the other. So those of us who are born from always run the risk of going stale. And so we can do all the observances, but are we really close via that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And then you have people who are taka religious, but totally non-observant. So they could be doing quite high on the x-axis, but not on the y-axis. Elul is a representative of Am Yisrael climbing from a spiritual low to a spiritual high. But the way they climbed was possibly just one of, okay, we'll be monotheists now and not of Avodah Zorah. But to move closer to Kosh Baruch Hu along the x-axis, that is the avodah of Elul. Okay, so that is the first principle that I wanted to share with you. The second idea is a challenge that we have in the nusach of the davening to appreciate the phrase Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the birthday, if you will, of the world. So we all know that there's a famous machlokes between Rabbi Ledrush and Rabbi Yeshua as to when the world was created, and we have to work out how each one of their opinions fits into the nusach of the davening and what message they give Hayom Harat Olam. So Rabbi Ledrush tells us that the world was created in Tishrei, and the actual beginning of the Briat HaOlam is really 25th of Elul, culminating in the reason for the world being there, and that's human beings. So Hayom Harat Olam, the Rosh Hashanah, being the 6th day of creation, is the birthday of the world, where the world means the human being. The human being is the crowning glory of creation. Everything is created, in a sense, to work with the human being. Rabbi Yeshua is a little bit more complex in order to appreciate his investment or his understanding of what Hayom Harat Olam means. If the world is created in Nisan, the physical world is created in Nisan, so then what do we do with Tishrei? So there's a famous Rabbeinu Tam, a famous comment on the Tosfos over there in Rosh Hashanah Chav Zayin Amud Aleph, where Rabbeinu Tam basically doesn't see that Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua are mutually exclusive, but rather the machlokes is on the emphasis. So Rabbeinu Tam says as follows: the world came into being possibly in one of two stages. Stage one was the concept. Stage two was the actual creation. And the shaila, the machlokes between the two Tanoim is what do we place the emphasis on? Do we place the emphasis on the physical creation or the conceptual creation? Rabbi Yeshua, who holds that the physical world was created in Nisan, will hold that the Tishrei before the concept of the world was created. B'machshava. Conceptually, b'machshava, the world already was, so to speak, created at that point in time. The 6-month gap between the concept and the fulfillment of that concept. That would explain the world. Hayom harat olam. The word harat meaning concept. Liot beherayon is to be pregnant, but it's the conceiving of child. So Rabbi Yeshua's approach would force us to understand that Rosh Hashanah Tishrei is the creation of the concept of the universe, not the actual creation itself. What Musar Haskel can we take out of Rabbi Yeshua's Chidush? And so this is a lovely idea where you sort of emphasize to the tzibur as follows, that just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world b'machshava, and the outcome was going to be down the track, he was teaching Am Yisrael a lesson, or humanity a lesson, and that is that as long as Rabot Machshavot B'leivish, so we often use that as a kind of a statement saying that you can plan as much as you want, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Eitzah is the one that's going to last, and we sort of use it in a negative way that don't be so clever, Rabot Machshavot B'leivish, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's in control. But you can turn that pasuk in a positive way. You can spin it to say it's important to have Rabot Machshavot B'leivish. It's important for a human being to plan his life, to have ambition, to invest in himself. And the outcome will be based on how HaKadosh Baruch Hu works with you. But if you don't have a plan, there's no outcome. As a young kid, as you all know, when we were at school or at university studying for exams, or even for smicha possibly, those of us who weren't that disciplined spent so much time on the timetable. You had all these timetables that you used to rewrite every 10 minutes because you couldn't study properly. But bottom line is that there's value in creating a timetable. I once saw a comment by this idea I saw written with a nice little comment by Rav Ari Khan from Eisha Torah when he was working there. He wrote this piece. You can probably find it online there. But he would, I think he quoted it from Rab Gedalia Shor, from the Or Gedaliahu, that the reason that the actual creation is based on Midat Hadin, and the concept of creation is based on Midat Hadin, and the physical creation had to be, the din had to be diluted with Rachamim, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges a person on his ambition. At least make a plan. You can't vouchsafe what's going to happen, but show me a plan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants Rosh Hashanah to be the demonstration of each person's timetable and a plan, the creation of machshava. That's the second concept. I know I'm running out of time, so you can just stop me if you want at some point. There's a do you want me to carry on or just share one last idea? One last idea.
Yeah, give us one more idea. Let's go 5 more minutes. Try to finish at 1.
Okay. There's a wonderful comment that I enjoy saying over from the Torah Tamimah of Baruch Halevi Epstein in his Baruch Chomer. He highlights the fact that he finds it interesting to note that in the middle of Zichronot, the character that comes to the fore, demonstrating that HaKadosh Baruch Hu recalls people in need and answers their tefillot, is Noach. We make a big deal about Noach in the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah Zichronos. The question is why? Noach, interestingly enough, is a personality who is not unquestionably celebrated. In other words, we all know the famous Gemara the Machlokes of Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish with the Doshin Nignaid, Doshin Nishvach, and therefore the question is, what do you say about Noach? So we would assume that, okay, look, the Baal Nusach of the Tefillah of Zichronos would have then thought to say, well, Noach is Doshin Nishvach, Hitaka is a tzaddik, and therefore we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to remember us just like he remembered Noach as a tzaddik. However, the problem is that you look in the Gemara, you see that the person who composed the nusach of Zichronos was really Rav. Rav was Rav, and Rav was the mentor of Rabbi Yochanan. So if Rav was the mentor of Rabbi Yochanan probably would have said over or taken on his mentor's opinion and shitta legabe Noach. And Rabbi Yochanan is the one who says Doshin Gnai. So if we assume that this is true, that Rabbi Yochanan is a Talmud of Rav who composed the Nusach, holds that Noach was only a relative tzaddik and not an absolute tzaddik, but Avram Avinu was, why would you ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to recall a relative tzaddik while we're davening for his rachamim? Because a relative tzaddik won't give Am Yisrael the schus avos like Avram Avinu is. To which the Baruch Lady Epstein wants to suggest that Taka, that's the point, because on the one hand it's true, Noach is a relative tzaddik, he's only righteous compared to the evil people in his generation. But the truth be told is, all of us are like that. All of us really, if you look deep down, there's only a few great people who mamish deserve their existence and can be compared in Tzidkut to Avram Avinu. Noach therefore represents all of Klal Yisrael. The irony is that on Rosh Hashanah, Noach becomes the biggest Meilitz Yosher, because we are all brilliant Jews or brilliant people relative to those people around us, relative to the humanity around us. The Jews in Eretz Yisrael are fantastic people because they live in a pathetic neighborhood. So at the end of the day, that's why we take a daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We recognize that even to a relative tzaddik, HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows rachamim, and so Al Kain, therefore we say in the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give all of us who are only taka relative tzaddikim the rachamim and the so-called sweetening of the Midat Adin on Rosh Hashanah that we all hope for. Okay? Shkoyach for listening, and hope that added to your repertoire.
Shkoyach, Rabbi Blackman. Shkoyach, guys, for joining. This will be posted on YouTube. I'll send everybody out the link if you missed it, or for the other Chaverim that never made it. And please God, we'll have another one. Happy for volunteers that we'll have between Yom Kippur and Sukkot to give us some ideas for Sukkot and Simchas Shmini Atzeret. Learn well, drosh well, and please God have a Gemar Chatzimah Tovah.